Thank you very much, Nicholas. Good afternoon, everyone. And Domenico, since you called me out, hello to you, and Colleen, of course, my colleague from the World Bank days. Delighted to be here, and thank ICMA for your kind invitation. So let me tell a couple of stories to begin my speech. So if you go back 3-4 decades ago, if you were an investor, you wanted to compare financial performances for potential investment opportunities from different countries, the first thing you have to overcome is the different accounting standards, right? Every country has a different way and different standard to, for their company to do financial reporting. There were visionaries at that time, like the former federal chair of Paul Volcker, who envisioned a time when everybody would speak the same accounting language. Therefore, the IFRS Foundation was created over 2 decades ago, and then the International Accounting Standard Board was created. You fast forward to now, 145 countries speak the same accounting language on international accounting standard. So let me park that story aside and tell you a second story. That is, in the year 2007, the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change again issued one of its regular research paper. But that paper was seminal in the sense that for the first time, it said, with over 90% confidence level, climate change can be attributed to human activities. Well, guess who read the report? A couple of Swedish pension fund investors. So they said, are there things we can do about it? They got together, they went to their banker, ISSB, which in turn approached the World Bank. And therefore, in 2008, the world's first green bond was born. And you fast forward to now, the green bond, sustainable linked bond, social bond, we are now talking about several $trillion market. I tell this story to say that, of course, the rapid increase of green bond and social bond really was a function of investor becoming very conscious that their investment now needs to factor in sustainability matters or ESG matters. And ICMA, working with the community by creating the green bond standard principle and social bond and now sustainable bond principles, played a key role in creating that single language for the bond market, for green bond to thrive. So, joining these 2 stories, I'm very pleased to share with you, if you have not read news over the past couple of days, that on Monday, June 26, 2023, we have now formally introduced the ISSB Sustainability Disclosure Standard S1, S2, and therefore ushering a new era of creating a single language of global sustainability disclosure, a high-quality global baseline that will converge and yet again starting a journey of bringing all of the efforts of creating sustainability disclosure into a global single language. So let me just very quickly say that the ISSB is a sister board of the International Accounting Standard Board under the IFRS Foundation. And the objective of what we do is very similar of that of ICMA. That is, we serve the interest of capital market. We serve the interest of investors because a transparent, accountable, efficient, trustworthy capital market benefits everyone. I think from the standard maker perspective, by creating a single language that investors and preparers can understand each other is a critical building block of of getting there. So we were actually created at COP26, so that linkage with the urgency of climate financing is there from day one. Our creation was strongly supported by G20, G7, Financial Stability Board, and the international community, including ISSB. Now, we have been working very hard since our creation in creating the first set of standards, including recruiting 14 independent board members, myself included. By the way, impressive colleagues on the board representing stakeholders from investors, from industry, from academia, from policymakers, and I'm very, very impressed with the quality of the board, and of course, talented staff working very hard over the past year and a half in creating our standard. So what are the standards we have created? We call them IFRS Sustainability Standard, or shorthand S1 and S2. S1 is what we call the general requirement of sustainability-related financial disclosure. It asks a company to systemically disclose material information on sustainability risk and opportunities. It provides the architecture, which is TCFD architecture. It provides, if we say we are embarking on a new language, it provides a lexicon, the grammar, the vocabulary of the new language, of how you should go about describing and determining the materiality of your sustainability risk and opportunity. So that's S1, which is now on our website and as public knowledge. S2 focuses on climate, where we ask a company to describe its following TCFD, governance, strategy, risk opportunity, metrics and targets of how you are dealing with your material climate risk. We require companies to disclose scope 1, 2, and 3 GHG emission. We ask companies to describe your physical and transition risks, and I heard a lot about transition financing. We ask companies to conduct scenario analysis and come up with their resilience assessment. We ask companies to reveal their jurisdiction's Paris-aligned or nationally determined target on net zero, and what are the strategies, metrics, and targets of that company in achieving those nationally committed targets. So that's S2. Realizing that this is a global baseline standard that will apply to companies in almost 200 different countries with very different stage of readiness, size, business lines, we have built in a high degree of what we call proportionality and scalability into the standard. The overall message is that start where you are. We are not looking for perfection so that you are afraid, my goodness, if I start, what if I look bad? The opposite is true. That is, in spite of your different stage of readiness, the standards, S1, S2, give you enough guidance so that you can start reporting. Give you one example. If you are new to scenario analysis, we require that you just do a qualitative articulation instead of a sophisticated quantitative one. Of course, as you progress, as you build up your knowledge, your sophistication, you can embark on that sophisticated quantitative approach. The other relief we are given is what we call transitional relief, recognizing that scope 1 is very complex because you need to collect data from your entire supply chain. So we said that in your year 1 of reporting, you can focus just on scope 1 and 2. Then in year 2, your scope 3 is somebody else's scope 1 and 2. Now, if a jurisdiction still feels uncomfortable that maybe 1 year relief is not enough, then the regulator in that country, if so decide, can give additional relief. We have also said that although our S1 requires that you disclose all material information on sustainability risk and opportunity, in addition to whatever required in S2, which is climate, we have also given 1 year relief. So in year 1, you can focus on climate. So this is a climate first kind of effort, but not climate only. I'll get into the agenda consultation a little later on, but the message is that now that our first 2 standards have come out, we are now mobilizing with global partners to provide capacity building, education, technical assistance, so that jurisdictions of different stage of readiness, could feel comfortable starting that journey, right? Look, I mean, when you try to learn a new language, you cannot expect that you can speak that language perfectly from day 1. But if you don't start, you will never get there. On the other hand, let me also say that those who are in Singapore who thought that Singlish is the same with English, you are very wrong. Try to have a conversation, and Singaporean colleagues, please try to impress foreigners with Singlish. I don't think they will get a clue, meaning that the very purpose of this global baseline is that we will speak the same language. That's why we call it baseline. Now, on top of the baseline, each jurisdiction can and should add additional building blocks that jurisdiction believe is important, right, in addition to the global baseline. But it is not supposed to be that within the baseline S1, S2, you're going to pick and choose which elements, because that will defeat the purpose of this global language. So in addition to our effort in supporting both mandatory and voluntary adoption of our standard, we're also cognizant there are other regional standards or standards not for the purpose of investors, for example, GRI, for example, the European standard, for example, the US SEC standard on climate. We are working very hard with those standard bodies to achieve interoperability so that we jointly serve the needs of the investors on one hand, and for the other standard, also to serve the other multi-stakeholders without adding more confusion to it. So this is something that we are working on. At the same time, we have started agenda consultation. As I said, we are not climate only, we are climate first, because sustainability covers a very broad area of risk and opportunities for investors. So we have started agenda consultation on 4 topics, and these are on our website, and I would encourage you to put in your comments to help us shape the priorities that we're going to work on in the next 2 years. Those 4 agenda items include biodiversity, nature, and ecosystem. So that's one. The second one is elements related to human capital. And the third is sustainability risks related to human rights. And the fourth is the interconnectivity between financial reports and sustainability reports, so that it will become a holistic body of financial disclosure to investors. So I would encourage you, through our consultation, we have a web tool that you can put in your comments that can help us to shape which are the future sustainability standard we should work for. Now, let me quickly reflect on what does it mean for the green bond principles, for ICMA, for what would be the areas that we can work together. I think the first good news is that, as many speakers have alluded to, the journey of starting with green bond to sustainable bond is a journey from asset-specific or use-specific to a whole balance sheet approach. And that is what we are doing in terms of our sustainability reporting. And hopefully, think of a scenario in the future when companies are all compliant with our standard elements that they have already reporting on their annual cycle. It will be much easier to extract those information relevant for green bond or social bond standard investors. The second is really digital taxonomy. That is, this is the first set of standard that will come digitally. We're digital native in the sense that as soon as the standard become effective, a set of digital taxonomy will be accompanying our standard. And I think, I look forward to working together to converge both taxonomy on sustainability as a classification, but also the digital taxonomy so that we can enable seamless use of data across different asset classes, across different purposes. The last point I want to make is obviously capacity building and raising awareness where we can work together. And of course, my call out to my previous employers, the World Bank, the IFC, the Asian Bank, the African Bank, to also become early voluntary adopters of S1, S2. Colleen, my message to you is that, right now, when you produce your impact report, you have to extract data from different part of the bank. But once you become compliant with S1, S2, those data will be ready. That will make the Treasury's job, the funding, investor relationship job much, much easier. So let me conclude by reflecting that I have been privileged in the past decade and a half in Asian Bank, in IFC, in the World Bank, participated and led some of the sustainable bond creation. For example, the first South African green bond, the first green masala bond, so on and so forth. So I think I view my role as a vice chair as the ISSB as a continuation of that journey. At the end of the day, our goal is to make that $400 trillion global institutional savings, and for those investors to be able to make informed decisions where they want to do their asset allocation, right? So as a public service institution, both for ICMA and for IFRS, ISSB, our job is to ensure better information for better decision. And hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later. So let's start that journey today. Thank you very much.